So our warm-up, we found the area of this square, which was area is side squared, side times side, 5 times 5, which gave us 25 inches squared. Notice that little 2 because it's a square unit, because area is a two-dimensional measurement. Okay. Next week is STAR testing for English and also Fiesta Week, 4-day week. Friday's off, right? So now back to our notes. We already filled out these. Okay, so let's recap. Perimeter is one-dimensional. It's the distance around the edge of a shape. It's like walking around the edge of something. That's the distance, right? Area is asking how many squares would fit inside. So perimeter is outside on the edge. Area is two-dimensional inside, how many square units. And then we just talked about the apothem, the distance from the center of the polygon to the midpoint of one side. Okay, so real quick, if I had a triangle from the center to a midpoint, that is my little a apothem. So that's an example. Okay, but we'll get to the apothem on the last page of this, or the last section. Let's talk about the area of a square. Now, we just talked about it on the warm-up, but area is side times side for side squared, okay? So go and write that down for area of a square, side times side, or side squared works. Okay, next one, area of a rectangle or a parallelogram. I heard it earlier, 2 different ways it's said, but you can think of it as a rectangle or a parallelogram, whether you think of it as length and width, or whether you think of it as base and height. All you're doing is multiplying those 2 dimensions to get your 2-dimensional area. So it's either length times width, or base times height. Now, I want y'all to notice, for a parallelogram, the height is not the diagonal, it's straight across. It's perpendicular to the base. Okay? So everyone's written that down, or writing that down? For rectangle and parallelogram, it's length times width, or base times height. What? That's my weird owl. Okay. Okay, now, each quadrilateral is a rectangle. Write the appropriate formula and substitute the values, and then solve. Okay, so, and ignore those blue lines. I don't know why they're there. But let's find the area of this square. What do I do at 3.5? Find the area. .5 is all the way around, right? So I have 3.5 and 3.5. So you can either do 3.5 squared, or you can just do base times height, which is what times what? What am I multiplying here? Okay, 3.5 times 3.5. And I get 12.25. What are my units of measure here? I need that pass. Yards. YD means yards. So I'm going to put yards. And remember, area means yards squared. Okay. Now, for perimeter, all we're going to do is add up all 4 sides. And since it's a square, all the sides are the same, we're going to add up 3.5 4 different times. You could do 3.5 times 4, or just add up 3.5 plus 3.5 plus 3.5 plus 3.5. Either way, you're adding up all the sides. Does everyone understand how to do perimeter? Add up all the sides. And what do we get? 14. And what are my units of measure? Yards. These are not squared. Everybody hear me? Area is yards squared. Perimeter is just straight yards. Okay? Very important. Are you finishing your test? Finish your test, please. Finish your test, please. Okay, here we go. Number 2. What is that shape called? What is this? Remember the song? Parallelogram. So, how do I find the area of a parallelogram? We already set it up here, okay? Base times height. So, this thing on the bottom is my base, right? What's my height of this parallelogram? 1.5. Not 1, 1.5, right? That's my height. So for area, I'm going to do base times height, okay, which means 3.5 times 1.5. Okay, let's go to the calculator and do that. 3.5 times 1.5. 5.25. Now, what are my units of measure? Inches squared. Does everyone remember? Area is squared, two-dimensional. Now, this is a little different for perimeter. Don't worry about the height. Okay, perimeter only matters about the edges. What are my 4 side links that I'm going to add together here? What do you think? 3.5. Not 1.5. So that's the height. It's dashed. 1. 3.51, and then also 3.51. All 4 sides got to be added together. Okay? Let's do that. 3.5 plus 1 plus 3.5 plus 1 gives me, you should get 9, and that's going to be measured in inches. Not inches squared, just regular old inches, because you're going around the edge. Okay? Now, those are like your straightforward problems. These next ones are what if they complicate things and they give you the area and they're asking for the height. Okay? So, let's think about this. I know my base is 15. I know my height is missing, but I know my area is 300. So I want to set up my equation. Okay, so here we go. I know area equals B times H. Let's plug in what we know. 300 goes here for A. Y'all see why that is? Because it says it up here. My B is 15 times H, which is missing. Okay. Now, if I'm trying to solve for H, what would I do to get rid of that 15 in front of H? Divide. Okay, do y'all see that? So 15 in front of H, 15 has to go. I'm going to divide by 15. What is 300 divided by 15? 20 I hear, and 20 I get. So 20 equals my height. Okay. If you're given the area, then you have to solve it this way. You set up the equation, and you may have to divide. Okay. Now, since I know the height is 20, I'm going to label that on my picture here. So I have a height of 20, and then my other 2 sides are going to be 20 and 15. Can we find the perimeter now by adding all 4 sides up? We can. So we're going to add them up. 20 plus 15 plus 20 plus 15. And if you add all those up, you get 70. Now, I've been bad. I haven't put my units of measure. Let's go ahead and put these units of measure. Height is 20 what? Meters. Now, the only time we use squared is for area. right? So we already had that one given, so just 20 meters. And what about perimeter? 70 meters. So everybody, perimeter is just meters. Base and height, just meters. The only one that's squared so far is the area, A. Okay? So 20 meters and 70 meters, that's good. Okay, now the next one. Again, they're trying to be tricky, trying to be cute. If I know the perimeter is 40, okay, I want to think about what are my four sides, right? Because if you add up all four sides, that's the perimeter. Okay, so we do have two 8s and two z's. Now, I'm going to set up a big equation, okay? I'm going to add up all four sides equal to 40, right? That's what perimeter means. So 8 plus z plus z. All four sides has to add up to my perimeter, which is 40. 8 plus 8 is 16. Z plus z is... Now, if you add a z and a z, how many z's is that? 2z. Yes, sir. That's the next step. Very good. So to get z by itself and get rid of the 16 loner, we're going to subtract it. Now, some of y'all are thinking algebraically without writing it down, which is great. That's good to think algebraically. So you subtracted 16 first in your head, which is great. And then you thought, how do I get rid of that 2? Divide. Okay. So some of y'all are able to do this mentally, which is perfect. That's awesome. Okay. I'm just showing all my steps. And I know there's not a lot of room, and I'm sorry. But let's divide by 2. What's 24 divided by 2? 12. So my z, my missing side, is 12. 12 feet. And again, not squared, because we're not talking about area. But let's do talk about area. Area is base times height. So I'm going to multiply what? 8 times 12. And 8 times 12 is 96 what? Feet squared. Again, once you figure out z, once you have your base and your height, multiply them, and it's units squared, okay? So for this, finishing this up. Okay? So finishing this up, you can use your answer choices here. All right? All right, gotta make sure this is all filled up. Now, next page for you is just over to the right. Now, I'm going to tell you the truth. This is the hardest thing for most people. Can y'all look at me? This is the hardest thing for most people. It's not really that hard, but people forget one little thing, okay? And that a triangle is not the same as a rectangle. There's one difference. When you're finding the area of a triangle, the only difference is that it's half, okay? So instead of just base times height, it's a half base times height. Or you could say base times height divided by 2. So let's write that down. Yes. So that's the second one, BH over 2. That's the idea, okay? Because half of something is just basically dividing by 2, so that's perfect, okay? I personally prefer the second one, base times height divided by 2, so I don't have to, that's like a multiplying a fraction, okay? But they're the same idea. Has everyone acknowledged mentally that a rectangle is not a square, duh, but also the formula is not the same? Believe me, tons of people are going to just do, oh, base times height, duh, and get it wrong. Don't forget to divide by 2 if you're talking about a triangle. Very important, okay? Think about it. If you cut a rectangle in half from corner to corner, that's a triangle. Half of the area. It makes sense visually, okay? Okay, now each polygon is a triangle. Write the appropriate formula, substitute the values, and solve. Use the appropriate unit in each answer. Okay, so let's do this. Number 5. The area is base times height divided by 2. What's the base of this triangle? 6 is my base. What's my height? 2. Okay, so the height's not 4, the height's not 5. The height is 2. It's dashed going in the center there because it's perpendicular. It makes a right angle. Okay, so all we got to do is 6 times 2. And I cannot forget to divide by 2 because it's a triangle. 6 times 2 divided by 2. What do you think it is? If you plug it in, 6 times 2 divided by, divided by 2. 6 times 2 divided by 2. There we go. We do get 6. 6 what? Centimeters squared. Thank you. Because we're talking about area. Area squared, 2-dimensional. Now, perimeter. Don't get tricked. Perimeter means you add up all the sides, but not all the numbers, okay? This height is not a side. When you're adding up all the sides, do not add this 2. This 2 is not a side. Cool? Okay, 5, 4, and 6 is perfect. Those are the 3 sides. 3 sides of a 3-sided figure of a triangle, right? So let's add them up. 5 plus 4 plus 6. And we get 15 what? Centimeters. Not squared. It's just 1-dimensional perimeter. Cool. Do it again. Area equals. What's the base? What's the height? So the base is 11. The height is 9. 11 times 9 divided by 2. When you type it in your calculator, you're going to want to press Control Enter because it's a decimal answer. 11 times 9 over 2. Control Enter is 49.5. And what are my units of measure? Meters squared. Now, perimeter, kind of tricky. 9 is not a side, once again. But this side is not labeled. So you see the tick mark here? It has to match the other tick mark, which is what? 11. You'll see that? So tick marks always match. So if this is 11, I'm going to label 11 on the other tick mark. And now I can add my 3 sides. So it's going to be 15.3 plus 11 plus 11. And I should get 37.3. And again, this is going to be meters, not squared, because we're not talking about area. All right. What's the height on number 7? 5. The perimeter, let's add up all 3 sides. I get 21. Those are both centimeters. Okay, so for area, what do I multiply to get the area? Base times height divided by 2, right? So what's the base? What's the height? Okay, 8 times 5, and then we divide by 2. You should get 20, and the units of measure are centimeters squared because we're talking about area. Area is always 2-dimensional and squared. Now, last but not least, okay. Okay. We're going to skip number 8 for now, okay? And then we can go to talk about the next one, which on the next page, trapezoids, okay? Yeah. All right, does everyone have this down? Okay. Now, we used to have these formula charts that we'd give you, and we can still print them out, but our paper supply is short. But I do have them on the back wall here, so that's algebra. Over here we have, it's like vaguely pink, you can kind of barely read it, but trapezoids, triangles, rectangles, rhombus, all that stuff. But trapezoid is this really weird one. 1/2 B1 plus B2 times H. Okay, so let's write that one down. So here's one way to write it. 1/2 B1 plus B2 times H. Or you can write it as B1 plus B2 times H divided by 2. You can either put the fraction out front or make it a big fraction divided by 2. Same thing. On this example, B1 and B2 are the bases that are parallel, okay? I don't want to always say top and bottom because if it's rotated, it won't look like that, but it's the ones that are parallel to each other. So in this case, 8 and 4, those measurements are on parallel sides. Doesn't matter which one's 1 or 2. We'll call this one B1, call this one B2. And then we have the height between them that's perpendicular. So we have all the numbers we need. Let's go ahead and plug it in our formula, right? So the area equals, and I'm going to use the big fraction one. Base 1 plus base 2 will be 4 plus 8 times the height, which we just labeled as 6, and then divided by 2. You can do that piece by piece, or you can just type into the calculator in one step. Let's see if we can do that. Control divide, parentheses 4 plus 6, parentheses, 4 plus 8 times 6. All right, let's see what I get. 4 plus 8 times 6 divided by 2 is 36. That is right. Very good. All right. So the area is 36. What are my... Now this is a situation. What are the units of measure here? So there's no units of measure given. So what we would, if there's no units of measure, I would just put units squared. Whatever those units are, they're squared, okay? So obviously we're out of time. So keep this, and we're going to have to finish trapezoids and then get into polygons next time.